Imagine your mind isn't some dramatic courtroom where good and evil are battling it out.
Right.
Imagine instead that it's just this completely unregulated, collapsing national park.
Oh, that's such a good way to put it.
Yeah, like the rivers are muddy, the soil is eroding, and the absolute biggest threat to your sanity isn't some dark lurking monster.
No, it never is.
No, it's actually a herd of completely harmless, polite, incredibly destructive little deer.
Which is wild, right? It completely upends how we're, taught to view our own psychology.
Totally.
We're so conditioned to always look for a villain to defeat. We never think of ourselves as an ecosystem that just needs to be managed.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that is the very specific, highly customized mission for you, the listener, today. Welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
We are looking at this brilliant, extremely short piece of text that honestly fundamentally rewrites the way we think about mental health.
Oh, absolutely. Internal balance, the competing factions of the human psyche. It touches on all of it.
It really does. So the piece is titled Internal Rewilding, The Wolves of the Soul. And I'm going to read this for you right now, verbatim, start to finish.
Please do.
You really need to hear the exact mechanics of this metaphor before we get into it. Okay, here's the text. Inside me, there are two wolves. This is not enough to control the deer population inside me, which is degrading the river ecology inside me. I'm attempting to release more wolves inside me to address this, but the ranchers inside me object.
I mean, it's just an incredible piece of writing.
It's so good.
In literally 3 sentences, it takes one of the most tired, overused cliches on the internet and turns it into a masterclass on the nervous system.
Yeah, and social conditioning, too. Okay, let's unpack this, starting with how the author sets the trap right at the beginning. Inside me, there are two wolves.
Right.
Everyone listening probably knows the original parable this is referencing, right? The story where a grandfather is talking to his grandson, and he says there are two wolves fighting inside him.
Yeah, the classic trope.
Exactly. One is good, representing peace, love, humility, and the other is evil, anger, greed, ego, aggression. And the grandson asks, which wolf wins?
And the answer is always the one you feed.
The one you feed.
Right.
It's the ultimate moral binary.
And it's incredibly comforting, I think, because it tells us that our inner life is just this simple choice between light and dark.
Yeah.
Like, if you just starve your aggression, if you starve your boundaries and your teeth, you're going to magically become a good, peaceful person.
Right. It sets up this expectation that to be civilized, you literally have to eradicate your predatory instincts.
But the text immediately shatters that comfort.
Oh, completely shatters it.
The second sentence drops the moral binary entirely. This is not enough to control the deer population inside me.
Yes. The wolves aren't locked in some epic spiritual battle anymore.
No, they're just out there in the woods, exhausted.
They're holding clipboards. They're like an understaffed pest control team.
Exactly. They're trying to do their jobs and just completely failing because there are only 2 of them.
Right. If the wolves aren't a metaphor for good versus evil anymore, what does it mean when the aggressive, predatory parts of our soul are actually seen as this necessary, under-resourced workforce?
Well, what's fascinating here is the shift from moral judgment to practical utility.
Okay, say more about that.
So in an ecological framework, wildness or aggression, the wolves, that's not a moral failing that needs to be starved out of existence.
Right.
It's a vital regulatory force.
Mm.
Like in a real biological ecosystem, apex predators are essential. They cull the weak, they force movement, they maintain boundaries.
Oh, okay.
So if we map that onto human psychology, these wolves represent our capacity for assertiveness, our ability to say no. It's our protective aggression, our intolerance for being mistreated. It's that raw, unpolished drive.
Wait, I want to push back on that a little bit, though, because, in everyday society, aggression is almost entirely punished.
For sure.
Like if you show your teeth at work or if you're fiercely uncompromising in a relationship, you just get labeled as difficult.
Yeah.
We are actively trained to starve the wolves. So if we abandon the good versus evil framework, what does it actually mean for us if our internal security team only has 2 wolves on staff?
Well, it means you're highly vulnerable.
Huh.
Yeah. When you view the psyche as an ecology rather than a courtroom, you realize that eliminating your teeth doesn't make you virtuous.
Right.
It actually just makes you defenseless against passive consumption. The text is arguing that we need that predatory energy just to maintain basic internal order.
So having only 2 wolves isn't a badge of honor. It doesn't show how peaceful you are.
Not at all. It's a catastrophic staffing shortage.
Yeah.
It leaves your internal landscape completely unprotected.
And the text tells us exactly what happens when that landscape is unprotected too. The lack of wolves isn't enough to control the deer population, which is, and this is the quote, degrading the river ecology inside me.
Yeah.
And this is the part that really caught me off guard. Wait, aren't deer usually the good guys in stories?
All right, the gentle woodland creatures.
Yeah. We look at deer and we think of Bambi. They're innocent. Why are they the destructive force here? How does a lack of wolves suddenly turn Bambi into an ecological disaster?
To understand that, we actually have to look at the real-world science this text is referencing, specifically the concept of a trophic cascade.
Okay.
The most famous example of this is Yellowstone National Park. For decades, wolves were eradicated from Yellowstone because ranchers and farmers saw them as a threat.
Oh, so they thought they were doing the right thing, but removing the bad predators.
Exactly. They literally starved the bad wolf.
Wow.
And the result was total ecological collapse. Without the wolves, the herbivore population, the elk and the deer just exploded.
Right.
Because the deer had no predators, they stopped moving around, they got lazy, they just stood in the valleys and along the riverbanks eating absolutely everything.
Freezing constantly.
Right, they ate all the young willow and aspen saplings. And without those deep tree roots to hold the soil together, the riverbanks began to rapidly erode. The rivers widened, the water got shallow, muddy, warm, and the entire aquatic ecosystem began to die.
Okay, so the innocence of the deer is completely irrelevant.
Totally irrelevant.
Their harmlessness is the exact mechanism of the harm.
Yes.
They aren't maliciously trying to destroy the river, they're just passively consuming it until it collapses.
Exactly.
So how does this mechanism play out in our own minds? Like, if the wolves are our boundaries and our assertiveness, what are the deer? Could the deer represent, I don't know, unchecked, polite habits?
Absolutely. The deer are your passive, socially acceptable behaviors that quietly eat away at your energy.
Oh, like mundane anxieties.
Yes, the mundane anxieties, the passive overthinking, the constant people-pleasing.
It's like it's sitting at your computer for 20 minutes, staring at a Slack message, rewriting it 5 different times so you don't sound too demanding to your colleague.
Yes, that hesitation, that over-accommodation, that is a deer.
Wow.
It looks completely harmless. It looks like you're just being a nice, considerate person.
Right, you're just being polite.
But when there are thousands of these deer in your head, and you have no internal wolves to snap at them and say, no, this is a waste of time, send the email, move on.
They just take over.
Exactly. Those little passive anxieties completely overrun your system. They graze on your mental bandwidth until there's literally nothing left.
And when they graze on that bandwidth, they degrade the river ecology. So in this psychological park we're talking about, what is the river?
The river represents your central nervous system's baseline regulation.
Okay.
It's your flow state, your creativity, it's your core life force. A healthy river has strong banks, right? It flows with purpose and clarity.
Yeah.
But when you constantly compromise your own needs to keep the peace, when you let the deer overgraze, you lose your shape.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
The boundaries of your identity collapse, just like the eroded riverbanks in Yellowstone.
Yeah.
You end up feeling emotionally shallow, stagnant, and muddy.
So you experience burnout, not because you fought some massive, epic battle against a great evil, but because you were slowly chewed to death by 1,000 polite concessions.
That is exactly it.
That reframes burnout completely. You didn't burn out because you were weak. You burned out because you thought being harmless was the same thing as being healthy.
Yes.
You prioritize this superficial, momentary peace over the deep structural health of your internal ecosystem.
Precisely. To preserve the clarity and momentum of the river, you have to introduce friction.
Right.
You absolutely need the wolves to scare the deer away from the banks. You need the capacity to be firm, to be a little intimidating when necessary, and to aggressively protect your time.
Which logically leads us to the next phase of the text. The author recognizes the problem. They see the muddy river, the collapsing banks, the exploding deer population.
Yeah.
So they attempt a solution. I'm attempting to release more wolves inside me to address this, which makes perfect sense.
That does.
In Yellowstone, they eventually brought the wolves back, the deer scattered, the trees grew back, and the rivers literally changed course for the better. So the author is trying to rewild their own mind. But then we hit the final massive complication.
But the ranchers inside me object.
Here's where it gets really interesting. That's such a jarring pivot. Suddenly, we aren't just in a wild biological national park anymore.
No, we have human commerce now.
Yeah, we have agriculture, we have ranchers. Where did they come from? So what does this all mean for the author?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it shifts the entire metaphor from a pure, untouched wilderness to a contested, managed landscape.
Right.
By introducing the ranchers, the author brings in the realities of survival in a human society. The mind is no longer just an ecosystem. It's a complex economy.
It's a battleground.
Exactly. It's a battleground between our biological need for wildness and authenticity, the wolves and the river, and our societal need for domestication, commerce, and control.
But wait, if I look at my own life, the ranchers aren't just an annoyance. The ranchers pay my rent.
They do.
Like, if the ranchers represent the civilized, professional parts of my identity, the parts that know how to sit quietly in a Zoom meeting, the parts that nod along when a client is being unreasonable, they are doing an important job.
Very important.
If I just decide to rewild myself and I let my wolves out at the office because I'm sick of the deer wasting my time, I'm going to get fired. My relationships might fall apart.
Right.
So are the ranchers just the inner critics saying, don't release more passion or boundary-setting aggression because it will threaten our safe domestic livelihood? How are we supposed to balance a healthy river with the reality that we live in a society that demands we be tame?
You've just identified the central paradox of modern self-improvement. And it's the exact reason why the ranchers exist in the first place. You have to understand how these inner ranchers are formed.
Okay, how so?
They aren't born with us. The nervous system builds them. When we're young, we learn very quickly that being wild, being loud, being intensely angry, fiercely protecting our boundaries often gets us punished.
Yeah, you get sent to your room.
Exactly. It risks rejection from our caregivers or our peers. And to a human being, social rejection feels like a literal death threat to the nervous system.
Wow, right.
So we adapt. We build ranchers. These are psychological survival mechanisms designed to domesticate our behavior, fence in our wildness, and ensure we stay safely integrated into the herd.
So the ranchers are essentially trauma responses and social conditioning masquerading as professionalism and politeness.
Exactly. They aren't villains either, just like the deer aren't evil.
Right, the ranchers are just terrified middle managers trying to keep us from getting kicked out of the tribe.
Yes. The ranchers have mortgages. They have investments in your current identity. They represent your steady job, your comfortable but maybe unfulfilling relationship, or that carefully curated nice guy or nice girl image you've built.
I see.
The ranchers object to the wolves because releasing more wolves is a direct threat to that artificially managed safety. A wolf doesn't care about your quarterly performance review.
Wow.
A wolf doesn't care if people think you're agreeable.
Because the wolves won't just hunt the wild deer. If you let them loose, they might eat the rancher's prize sheep, too.
Exactly.
Like if you start setting fierce boundaries to protect your creative energy, you might end up alienating a client who pays well but treats you terribly.
Right.
You might upset a friend who has relied on you being a pushover for the last 10 years.
And your inner ranchers know this. They're looking at the spreadsheet of your life, and they're saying, the cost of this rewilding is too high.
Yeah.
If we let the wolves out, we lose our social standing. We lose our artificial security. Fixing one part of ourselves, saving the river by adding wolves, often directly threatens another deeply entrenched part of our identity.
It's an absolute psychological stalemate.
It really is.
And, you know, for you listening right now, you probably know exactly what this gridlock feels like. You sit there exhausted, knowing exactly what you need to do to feel alive again.
Yeah.
You know, you need to let yourself be a little feral, to say the hard no, to stop accommodating everyone else's comfort at the expense of your own vitality.
Yeah.
But the exact second you reach for the latch to let the wolves out, your inner ranchers stage a protest. They flood your nervous system with anxiety. They say, we can't do that. What will people think? We'll be ruined.
It perfectly captures why true healing or self-actualization is so incredibly difficult. It's rarely a matter of just lacking information.
Yeah, we know it's
We usually know the river is degrading. We can feel the banks collapsing. But we're paralyzed by our own internal lobbyists.
internal lobbyists. That's good.
Right. The inner economy, the ranchers who benefit from the safe, degraded status quo, refuses to absorb the risk required to restore the inner ecology.
It's staggering how much depth is in those 3 lines. I mean, the excerpt, Internal Rewilding, takes us on a journey from a very tired, simplistic moral binary to a rich, complex, and honestly hilarious portrayal of the human psyche as a messy ecosystem.
It really does.
It highlights the eternal struggle between the wild, necessary forces of our nature, the wolves and the rivers, and the domesticated, protective parts of our identity, the deer and the ranchers.
It strips away the guilt we often feel for having dark or aggressive impulses. It shows them instead as necessary guardians of our internal rivers.
Yeah, it's not about good versus evil at all.
No, it's about wildness versus domestication. It highlights that an ecosystem requires dynamic, often uncomfortable tension to thrive. You can't pave it all over and turn it into a sterile ranch, but you also can't just let it run completely feral without consequence.
Right.
The real work of being human is managing the negotiations between the wolves, the rivers, the deer, and the ranchers.
So, for you listening, take an honest look at your own internal landscape today. Consider your own internal river ecology.
Yeah.
Are your banks eroding? Are you letting a herd of polite, harmless-looking deer overgraze your mental bandwidth because you're too afraid to bare your teeth?
It's a tough question to ask yourself.
It is. And when you do finally recognize that you need more boundaries, when you reach for the wolves, what exactly are your inner ranchers saying to starve you? What artificial safety are they trying to protect?
It's a vital negotiation to be aware of.
It really is. But, looking at all these competing factions, the exhausted wolves holding their clipboards, the mindlessly consuming deer, the muddy riverbanks, and the anxious ranchers checking their spreadsheets, it leaves me with one incredibly provocative, lingering thought.
Oh, what's that?
Well, the text begins with, "Inside me, there are 2 wolves." And it ends with, "I'm attempting to release more wolves inside me, but the ranchers inside me object."
Right.
If the soul contains all of these things, if the wolves and the deer and the rivers and the ranchers are all just different subroutines and factions constantly at odds with one another, who exactly is the I that is attempting to release the wolves?
Oh, wow.
Right. Who is observing this whole mess? If the mind is a national park, who is the ultimate park ranger standing above the ecosystem trying to manage all these competing interests?
That is a fascinating question.
I'll leave you to ponder that internal hierarchy and what it really means to be the consciousness holding the keys to the wolf cage. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.